Established South African media personality Joanne Joseph is back on the literary circuit with a fiction debut book she entitled Children of Sugarcane. In this read, the best-selling author captures a story that narrates historical events of heroism spanning between 2 continents and 4 generations of experiences of phenomenal women. To help us unpack this offering further, let's now rope in its author, Joanne Joseph, and she joins us now via Zoom. Joanne, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So good to see you, Jo. How are you going? How's it going?
Good morning, Sims. Lovely to be back with you again after all this time.
I know, right? Good to have you on the show this morning. So when were you haunted by the idea to tell this story and call it Children of Sugarcane, Jo?
So it started about 9 years ago. I was looking into the history of my maternal great-grandmother, who came to South Africa as an indentured labourer in the late 1800s. And of course, I wanted to know a little bit more about her background, why she would have left India in the first place to come here. And I began researching that. And a lot of the information that remains in the archives led me down a kind of rabbit hole into a search for really the average woman who decided that she wanted to leave India to take on this what seemed like a monumental task, really, of leaving one's family behind, crossing the Indian Ocean to get to a continent, an entirely foreign continent on the other side. And I wondered what exactly would have set all of that in motion. So the subject, or the title, Children of Sugarcane, really came in towards the end. We had grappled with that a long time, my publishers, Jonathan and I, and we finally settled on that because we thought Children of Sugarcane really opened up the symbolism of the text in terms of what it meant to be quite literally descended from the people who worked in the sugarcane plantations and other British enterprises during the time of colonization, but also in a way touches on all of us who've been affected by the colonization project.
And on that monumental journey of crisscrossing 2 continents, one of the notable characters in this book is Shanti. Tell us more about this teenager's journey in the book and how you managed to bring her story to life so beautifully.
Thank you, Sim. So essentially, the story of indenture has not been told in South Africa, in particular, has not been told widely from the perspectives of women. We've got some beautiful literature that deals with families, that focuses much on the experiences of men, but doesn't really tell the story of women, particularly teenagers who came to South Africa at this time, because we must remember a lot of indentured labour drew in child labour at the same time. So Shanti is this character. She's the protagonist in the novel, really, and she decides that she needs to leave India, not because of all the sort of socio-political goings on there, although they do form an important backdrop to what she is about to do. But she has a very personal problem, and that is she is being forced into an arranged marriage by her parents. She does not want to do this. She's had access to some measure of education, and that's really what she wants to pursue. And she wants to pursue it into adulthood with the hope of becoming a kind of woman of letters, as they would have been known at that time. But of course, the prospect of an arranged marriage is not one that a girl of that age, a 14-year-old girl, could easily escape without the prospect of actually literally leaving her town, her village, leaving her family behind, and so forth. And so that is what I aim to do, is essentially to tell the story from the point of view of a young woman who was escaping her home, escaping some very traditional and cultural norms that were mitigating against her and her future, and decided that she was going to take this huge risk, which she found to be a fairly harrowing one once she reached the other side.
And as you tell that story, Joanne, you say that as much as this book is a work of fiction, you have drawn strongly on historical records and facts, yeah? Tell us more about this.
So we're very fortunate in this country, Sims, to have a wide variety of academics, from historians to sociologists to literary experts who've explored indenture in this country. Sadly, the average person is not accessing that information. So we don't often go to the library, and unless we have a particular interest in a subject, go and borrow textbooks on that. And so it was a matter of delving into this fantastic information that has already been unearthed. Fascinating information that's already been unearthed by the existing scholars and their large body of work, and simply putting it into a format that perhaps more people would want to access, simply because there are more fictional readers, perhaps. So it was a matter of taking history and simply reformatting it in a way, creating a representation of it that would bring the story to people who didn't really know the story of indenture or had a very scant understanding of it before.
And the book having been set in India and South Africa, and now speak to us about how you managed to sort of capture, the true essence of their history and link.
So again, we're very fortunate to have some sorts of visual references as well. I think of the book from Sugarcane Fields to Freedom, Cane Fields to Freedom rather, by Dr. Uma Dupilia Mestri, who's a wonderful historian. And those visual references in her book and in several other books, including those by Ashwin Desai, Gulan Vaid, Tembisa Waich, and a number of excellent South African historians, actually give you a very good idea of the surroundings of that time. They give you a good idea of the milieu, the dress, all the little details that you require in order to be able to put a kind of realistic or a believable setting together. So those were really very helpful from a visual point of view. I've already spoken about the research that accompanies that. But it's very strange. You might have grown up in Durban as I did, but you will not necessarily know what the borough of Durban looked like in the 19th century. It was unrecognizable to me in many ways, in terms of the pictures I saw and so forth. So in order to recreate that landscape in my mind, I had to consume a lot of the visual element. And that gave me a really good idea of what those settings looked like, whether it was 19th century India and the kind of village setting, a garrison town that the British had settled in, or whether it was 19th century Durban. It gave me a very good visual reference for exactly the kind of backdrop that I needed to paint in this book.
Now, Joanne, this is your first work of fiction. I mean, it comes hot on the heels of Drug Muled that left in tears in my eyes. Now, share with us, Joanne, how the process and experience was like for you working on this book.
So it was a slow process, to be quite honest, Sim, because I didn't know how to write historical fiction when I started it. And the poor friends and relatives who were subjected to that earlier draft must really have loved me a lot, because they were patient enough to work their way through it, even though it was a really awful version of it. It was cumbersome, it was clunky. I had to teach myself over the last 9 years how to write historical fiction. I did apply to get into a creative writing program at one of the universities here. I wasn't able to get into it. So essentially I was on my own, but I also had the incredible guidance of mentors, people who were working actively in this field. So a very close family friend, Dr. Betty Govenden, who's been in my life since I was a child, was able to guide me from a literary point of view. Dr. Helen Moffat, who is a brilliant editor, was able to take that first draft and strip it away drastically to give me good direction in terms of how one constructs a novel. Vashna Jagannath, who is a brilliant historian, also a doctor of history, was able to guide me as to the historical context and pick out little errors that I had left in the text. So it was quite important to have the guidance of an entire team in putting a book like this together. And that really cannot be taken for granted. The fact that although you have your name on the book, there is a team that helps you put this book together and craft it into something that is readable and hopefully enjoyable to the reader.
Joanne Joseph, lovely chatting to you, man. When I heard the news that you've published another book, I received the news with so much glee, because I know that we'll be basking in the glory of your literary prowess. Lovely chatting to you, Joanne. And I understand that you'll be launching the masterpiece on the 27th of this month. Just quickly give us those details.
So we've got quite a whirlwind tour coming up in the country, in a couple of cities in the country. I've already launched the book in Johannesburg this past Thursday to really warm response, which I was very grateful for. We're about to go to Durban from the 21st to the 23rd of this month, which is later this week, actually. We'll be in several venues in Durban. The big one is going to be a launch at Gateway Hotel on the 21st. That's the evening of the 21st. The 6 for 6:30 p.m. at the Gateway Hotel. I hope to see lots of our viewers from Durban there. And then, of course, we go to the Heritage Centre, the 1860 Heritage Centre on the Friday evening. Saturday evening, we're in Chatsworth, which is my hometown. Really looking forward to that one. And then I come back to Johannesburg, and on the 27th, we launch the book again at Hyde Park, Exclusive Books in Johannesburg.
An absolute masterpiece, Joanne Joseph. Lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sim.
That was established South African media personality and best-selling author Joanne Joseph, and we've been discussing her hot on the shelves book titled Children of Sugarcane.